Good morning, students. Yesterday we had closed by mentioning that the Indians and the Congress leadership, the freedom struggle, had now started completely thinking about the idea of a Purna Swaraj, that is, complete independence, rather than just what the British were willing to give, that was in the form of a dominion status, whereby Indians would have certain rights and they would have certain responsibilities as well. But the major power and the main decision making process would still lie with the viceroy and his council. Now, this was something which in the earlier times, that is, you have to understand that British had been ruling India since 1757, the decisive battle, after rather winning the decisive battle at Plassey in 1757, and then later the Battle of Buxar in 1764. So British had been in control of India and today's India, that is, and also along with today's Pakistan and along with today's Bangladesh, and definitely a great amount of influence over today's Burma as well. That is, today you call it Myanmar. So you have to understand that British were just willing to, and an Indian holding for the British was always considered to be jewel in the crown of British Empire, because you have to understand that British Empire was the most powerful empire ever created. It's not just that at that point in time, even till now, no empire on the planet has controlled so much of geography the way British Empire did at some point in time. And at the point when we are talking about, British Empire was at its zenith, that is at its peak. So that is what we are talking about. But now the British were not willing to give more than anything, just as a cosmetic, a cosmetic power, which I would like to call it. But now the Indians would not have it. A great part of Congress leadership once was always willing to have just a share in the power structure, and they would be happy about it. But then the new line of leadership, like Pandit Nehru and then Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, especially, these guys would not have anything less than complete independence for India. And as I told you yesterday, the man who first actually started this movement that Swaraj is my birthright and I shall have it was Bal Gangadhar Tilak, who made this statement in 1906. That was 22 years before Pandit Nehru and Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose ever made it. Okay, today we talk about the Salt March and the civil disobedience movement. Now, students, this again happens to be one of the landmark event in freedom struggle of India. Okay, the Salt March and the civil disobedience movement. So let's look at this. Now, Mahatma Gandhi found in salt a powerful symbol that could unite the nation. On 31st January 1930, he sent a letter to Viceroy Irwin stating 11 demands. And as we saw yesterday, that two major demands were, the first was to definitely remove this or abolish the salt tax, which was considered to be very, very oppressing. And the second one, which Mahatma Gandhi demanded, was that there should be a reduction in the salt, in the land revenue, which the British used to ask from the farmers. Okay, because the crops have been failing, and there was a depression, there was a slump in the market all around, and the farmers found it extremely difficult to to adhere to the financial commitments which they had made to the British. And that's what Mahatma Gandhi requested, that that kind of and that kind of rate under these times would be very difficult, but the British refused. So Mahatma Gandhi's letter was in a way an ultimatum. If the demands were not fulfilled by 11th March, the letter stated that the Congress would launch a civil disobedience campaign. Irwin was unwilling to negotiate. So Mahatma Gandhi started his famous salt march accompanied by 78 of his trusted volunteers. The march was over 240 miles from Gandhiji's ashram in Sabarmati to the Gujarati coast town of Dandi. The volunteers walked for 24 days, about 10 miles a day. Thousands came to hear Mahatma Gandhi wherever he stopped, and he told them that he meant what he meant by Swaraj and urged them to peacefully defy the British. On 6th of April, he reached Dandi and ceremonially violated the law manufacturing salt by boiling seawater, because before that only the state had that authority or the jurisdiction to do that, but Mahatma Gandhi flouted it and showed it to the British government that yes, salt is something which is so essential, and salt is something there should not be any tax on. Okay, because it is something which is consumed by the richest of the rich and the poorest of the poor. So, this marked the beginning of the civil disobedience movement. How was this movement different from non cooperation movements? Students, this is something which you would, the Salt March and the civil disobedience movements, the questions always come from this topic, always. Always, so right in the internal examination to the external examination, whatever examination you would appear for, you would find questions being asked from this topic. Okay, so please pay attention when this is being taught. So this marked the beginning of civil disobedience movement, and how was it different from non-cooperation movement? And this is also a very popular question as to how was the civil disobedience movement different from non-cooperation movement. So how was it different? Now let's look at this. Now, with the British as they done in 1921-22, but also to break colonial laws. Now, how it was different was that it was not just about not cooperating. You know, if you remember our previous video where when we had discussed the non-cooperation movement, Gandhiji said that British have been surviving in India, and British have been not just surviving but flourishing in India because the massive Indian population always cooperates with the British machinery at the government machinery of the British. And Mahatma Gandhi said, the truth is on our side. Why do we do that? You know, we are truthful that we have the right to be independent. This land belongs to us. So, you know, what are we afraid of? Why do we keep cooperating with them? And non-cooperation movement was, as it's very obvious from its terminology, it was just that not cooperating with the British. But civil disobedience was not cooperating with the British, of course, but also at the same time breaking the laws that were made by British. This important element was added to the civil disobedience movement, and as the word suggests, disobedience, that is, not obeying, not conforming, not listening to. So it was a civil disobedience movement. So thousands in different parts of the country broke the salt law, manufactured salt, and demonstrated in front of government salt factories. As the movement spread, foreign clothes was boycotted and liquor shops were picketed. Peasants refused to pay revenue and chowkidari taxes. Village officials resigned, and many places forest people violated forest laws, going into the reserve forest to collect wood and graze cattle. As we have seen in a previous video, that the people who hitherto had been living in jungles for centuries and centuries never felt like coming out and interacting with rest of the people. They also started coming out of the jungle, and full-fledged manner they started participating in the agitation against the British. So worried by these developments, the colonial government began arresting the Congress leaders one by one. This led to violent clashes in many palaces. This is a wrong word, students. It should be just simply many places. Okay, one a is extra. There shouldn't be no a after the letter P. So when Abdul Ghaffar Khan, a devout disciple of Mahatma Gandhi, was arrested in April 1930, angry crowds demonstrated in the streets of Peshawar. Uh, in the streets of Peshawar facing armored cars and police firing. Many were killed. A month later, when Mahatma Gandhi himself was arrested, industrial workers in Sholapur attacked police posts. Students, there's one thing which I would like to add here, and unfortunately, this gentleman, uh, Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan, his full name was Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan, not just Abdul Ghaffar Khan. Okay, and he was also known as Badshah Khan. Okay, students, Khan Ghaffar Khan was the leader of Pashtus. Okay, today that area, Pashtus are the original inhabitants of Afghanistan. Okay, and today you would a huge amount of Pashtus also live in today's northern Pakistan. Okay, now this is something which has always been a hotly debated topic in India's freedom struggle about when because when you talk about the movement, the successes of the movement of Indian independence, there are bound to be failures as well. And this is how the Khan Ghaffar Khan thing was handled by the Indian freedom leaders and the Congress leaders after India gained independence. It is hotly debated, and it is always considered to be a huge failure on part of the the Congress leaders, including Sardar Patel. Let me add here, not just Pandit Nehru and Gandhi, but also Sardar Patel, that they failed to understand the sentiments of the Pashtos after independence. Because you have to understand that Khan Ghaffar Khan, he was throughout an associate of Mahatma Gandhi, and it is no mean feat, students, that but he was such a charismatic and leader that he could persuade the Pathans and the Pashtos of today's Afghanistan, that is areas around that place, to wage a non-violent struggle, something which they had never done in their life, because as we all know, Pathans and the Pashtos, they are very aggressive in nature. But it was his charisma, and people really listened to the Pashtus, and the Pathans used to listen to whatever he said, and he persuaded them for a non-violent struggle, and wanted to be a part of the mainstream Indian freedom struggle, rather than when rest of India was fighting a non-violent struggle, they pick up guns and start killing the British. So Ghaffar Khan was never in favor of that. Okay, and but when India got independence, Ghaffar Khan, that is the Pashtus, wanted to be a part of India. They never wanted to be with Pakistan. Okay, and Khan Ghaffar Khan felt let down because the Indian leadership in Congress, they said, and they told Khan Ghaffar Khan to go with Pakistan, and they were not willing to talk to British, and that is the Indian leaders were not willing to talk to the British in trying to convince the British that yes, the Northwest Frontier Province, of which Ghaffar Khan was the leader, that should be made a part of Indian mainland. And so Ghaffar Khan had very famously, because he was so hell bent going against the wish of the British that they should be a part of Pakistan. Khan Ghaffar Khan had very famously told the Congress leaders, when they were being compelled to join Pakistan, that you have thrown us to the wolves. Okay, because he always wanted to be part of India, and his people to be known as Indians rather than his people to be known as Pakistanis. And even today, those areas in northern Pakistan, the Gilgit and Balochistan, which you often hear on television, are a huge source of headache for the government of Pakistan. We shall continue.